All right. Welcome to the Knowledgeable, a roundtable on financial education and resources. Good afternoon or good morning to those that are west of us. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is John Finch, and I am the director of Florida's ABLE program, ABLE United. Today's webinar does include American Sign Language and Spanish language interpretation. At this moment, I'll allow our interpreters to provide brief instructions on how to use those features.
Para escuchar en español, en estos momentos, por favor, vayan al icono abajo que dice interpretación de idiomas y opriman español. Si están llamando de un teléfono móvil, por favor, toquen los 3 puntos que dice más abajo a la derecha y opriman interpretación de idiomas y luego escojan español. Cuando terminen, aprieten done o hecho arriba a la derecha. If you would like to listen in Spanish at this time, please take a look at your screen and choose the icon that says interpretation at the bottom and select the Spanish language. If you're connecting from a phone, this is located at the bottom right. There are 3 dots that say more. Click there and then click language interpretation and choose Spanish, and then click done at the top right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for those instructions. One of the number one questions we hear from our customers and advocacy partners all the time is about how important financial education is. So we wanted to bring you this webinar to discuss our relationship with money and why it's so important on the financial decisions we make every day that impact our lives, and how we can better equip ourselves with the knowledge and skills necessary to manage our money more effectively. Today, we're going back to the basics and covering topics like saving, investing, as well as opportunities for the disability community to plan for the future with third-party special needs trusts and ABLE accounts. I'm joined by a team of advocates and experts who are passionate about helping individuals and families build a foundation for financial education so they begin saving for the future without fear. Today, our speakers are partner and financial planner at Levanti Wealth, Craig Eppy. Welcome, Craig.
Hey, John.
We also have health and financial literacy coordinator at the Florida Literacy Coalition, Allison Bell.
Hello.
As well as executive director at the Florida Literacy Coalition, Greg Smith. Hi, Greg.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you all for taking some time out of your day today to present on this important topic. I wanted to remind everybody, as we go through this presentation, you may have questions along the way. You should locate the questions and answer box. There, you can go ahead and enter your question, and we'll have a team in the background answer those as well. And we'll do our best to leave a little bit of time at the end to answer some questions. As we mentioned, today's webinar is being recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube channel in the next week or so. That's youtube.com/ABLE United. We will have both the English and Spanish for reference, so you can hopefully use those in the future and pass them out to others that may benefit. But before we get started, we always usually start off with a poll to get an understanding of how familiar you are with ABLE United and ABLE accounts. So right now, I'll go ahead and ask to put this poll up. And it'll be a brief poll to see how familiar you are with ABLE accounts. I think the poll is live. There we go. So how familiar are you with ABLE United or ABLE accounts? I'll give everybody a moment. I do like to note if you're one of the hosts, you're unable to answer. So hopefully, you guys are very familiar about ABLE accounts or ABLE United at least. I'll give everybody a few more moments to answer that poll, and then we'll kind of see where the results are here momentarily. All right, let's go see it. Can we get the results and see? All right, so most of you are somewhat familiar. A handful of you are very familiar. So almost 80% somewhat familiar. So that's great. And hopefully, not only will you learn a little bit about ABLE United, but you'll really get some of the basics in financial literacy. And just to give everybody a reminder of who ABLE United is, we serve as the Florida's ABLE program, which is basically a high level of financial and savings tool for the disability community. The program launched a little over 7 years ago, but before that had its roots when families with individuals with young children with disabilities wanted to create a way to allow them to start saving money without negatively impacting their future, especially when it comes to saving and trying to maintain public benefits. So Florida's ABLE program launched July of 2017. Since then, we've helped over 11,000 families save money into an ABLE account. Now, to be eligible for a program, there's 3 really rules to follow. 1, an individual has to be a Florida resident at the time they apply. Each state gets to set these programs up, so I always encourage individuals to check what their state ABLE program has, but we're Florida's ABLE program. The next 2 are true requirements for all ABLE programs, and 1 is that the individual has to have a severe diagnosis prior to age 26. And that severity is based on the Social Security standard for a child, but regardless of age. And so we have individuals in our program in their 80s, as well as newborns. And those types of disabilities range from anywhere with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, autism, individuals with mental health diagnoses, and much more. I encourage everybody to check out ableunited.com to learn more about the program, as well as see if you're eligible. One of the key advantages of the program is it allows individuals to put money aside up to $17,000 per year, take the money out within 2 to 5 business days, and use them for a variety of what they call qualified disability expenses. These expenses range from anywhere related to health, education, housing, transportation, and more. And the great thing is that money in the ABLE account generally doesn't impact eligibility for Medicaid, SSI, or any other federally means-tested program. And as a unique benefit for all those that are joining today, if an individual opens a new ABLE account before November 17th and contributes a minimum of $25 to the account, we'll chip in a $50 contribution as saying welcome and hopefully get you on your way to start saving for a better life experience. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into some of the specifics of financial education. And before we do that, another poll question we want to ask is, do you have a financial plan? That's a kind of a loaded question there as we start digging into financial literacy and financial education. But we'll go ahead and launch this poll question about, do you have a financial plan? Yes or no? And don't worry, this is anonymous. So, don't feel bad. It's good. It's a reason why you're here today, is to learn about planning for your future. And unfortunately, a lot of that has to deal with money. So give everybody a minute or 2 to answer that. And then we'll dive into our first presentation afterwards. All right, team, we want to close that poll down, kind of get a result here of it's about 64%, which is great, and about a third who do not have a financial plan. So perfect. Well, you're here, and hopefully we're going to give you the tools and resources. So thank you all. And I want to go ahead and invite Allison and Greg to go ahead and get ready to launch their presentation and to really discuss about the importance of financial literacy and help educate our participants today on topics like credit, banking services, taxes, but more importantly, the resources that are available for them to help them on their financial path to success. So with that, Allison, I'm going to turn you over to you and Greg to run through your presentation. And thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. My name is Allison Bell, and I'm the Health and Financial Literacy Coordinator at Florida Literacy Coalition. I'm going to be giving this presentation with my coworker, Greg Smith, the Executive Director.
Thank you, Allison. So we appreciate this opportunity to talk a little bit about financial literacy. It's a sort of core component of what we do here at the Florida Literacy Coalition. We're a statewide nonprofit organization that focuses on supporting local programs that offer adult education, literacy, and English as a second language instructional services. So these programs work with adults who, for whatever reason, didn't acquire some of these fundamental skills that many of us take for granted. If they were born and raised here in the United States, reading, writing, math, digital literacy skills, and then also working with people who are new to the country who need to acquire English language and literacy skills. We, about 8 years ago, decided to do a special initiative focused on financial literacy. We're big believers in contextualized instruction. So if we can help people build fundamental skills by also sharing information that's useful in their daily lives, that's a real win-win situation. And financial education, financial literacy is really a core component that all of us have to deal with on a daily basis. So through the generous support of Wells Fargo, we were able to establish the Florida Financial Literacy Initiative grants program that makes grants available to local programs to incorporate financial education into the work that they do. And through that process, we've been able to identify good quality, plain language, easy to understand instructional materials. And we want to share some of that with you here today. I did want to mention that if anybody is interested in our grants program, you can go to our website. And actually, Allison will include in the chat. We actually have an open grant opportunity now. It is for adult education providers that want to incorporate financial literacy into the work that they do. And the grants are up to $5,000. Next slide. So what is financial literacy? Well, it's all about the skills and knowledge and behaviors that individuals must have to make informed decisions regarding money. And it's there's good research out there, including from the World Bank, that shows that a lot of folks really do not have strong skills in this area. Only about 57% of adults in the US are considered sort of fully financially literate. Next slide. So a few statistics that we wanted to share that we thought were interesting about financial literacy in the US. About 54% of Americans report being worried that they don't have enough money saved. About 60% of Americans report they don't have enough savings to cover an unexpected expense of $1,000. So that tells you a lot. Most people really would struggle if they were faced with a charge, maybe their car breaks down or a medical expense or something that would amount to about $1,000 would really put them into a financial perilous situation. And 48% worried on a regular basis about their ability to pay their bills on a monthly basis. Here in Florida, we have some statistics that are more specific to our state. 46% of Floridians don't have an emergency fund. So the folks who are here on this call who have a financial plan, I think probably are ahead of the game in that regard. And I was glad to hear that the majority of folks do. We also know that about almost 20%, 19% of Floridians spend more money on a regular basis than they bring in. So they're essentially living in debt. And only about 31% of people score at a 80% level, which is sort of a competent level on a financial literacy quiz. So this is, a fundamental area. The good news is that with guidance and coaching and instruction, there's good materials out there that folks can educate themselves and their loved ones to really turn that around and gain information that can help them to make good decisions on a daily basis, not only for the big purchases, but just the daily decisions that we have to make around managing our money. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the importance of having good financial literacy. So it's not just about saving money with fewer fees and better loan opportunities, although that's certainly a perk. It can also have a significant impact in your overall quality of life. Financial literacy translates directly to financial freedom. And with financial freedom, you can prioritize your health, pursue your dreams, and enjoy a relatively stress-free life. Being smart with your finances can really have an incredible impact. So now I want to point out some great interactive activities you can explore on our website. Some examples are listed here on some of the topics that we have. So we will be talking about these resources in particular, and we have a lot of resources here listed by topic. So if you go to our main page, which is floridaliteracy.org, you'll see this section with the little $ that says financial literacy. This is where you'll want to go for these resources. So the resources most relevant to you can be found under the student resources and information by topic. So do make sure to explore those topics. And then I'm going to spotlight some in particular. So the first resource we're going to look at today is My Money. It's an educational program created for Floridians with disabilities, their families, and their caregivers. It was developed by the Department of Financial Services with the help of other organizations like the Agency for Persons with Disabilities and the Florida Department of Education. So this program offers an array of educational videos and interactive activities you can do at your own pace. Lessons focus on money basics like budgeting, in addition to more targeted lessons like topics on government benefits. Now, the next site is called Hands-On Banking. This is a wonderful, really engaging resource developed by Wells Fargo that we do use for curriculum for our financial literacy grant initiative. So it has a wealth of knowledge on banking, investing, and setting goals, to name a few. It's full of tools like calculators, practice tests, tips and tricks, and questions to ask yourself to forge your own financial literacy path. Now, the next resource is Keys Federal Credit Unions, Take Control of Your Money. This is another interactive resource. It was utilizing bonsai.org's financial education platform to offer extensive lessons on everything from everyday budgeting to managing chronic illness and even budgeting for a vacation. So if we click Browse All Collections, we can take a quick peek at the Managing Illness section. So this resource has information on health insurance, government benefit programs once again, and there's also materials on situations like if you're too sick to work, and all the topics with the little coach icon are interactive. So in these particular activities, learners are directed to educational content based on their responses to certain questions, allowing a really customized approach to learning. And then we also have from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Helping a Loved One Manage Their Money. So this is a collection of guides created for those helping a loved one manage their money. It offers tailored guidance to those with power of attorney, court-appointed guardians, trustees, and government fiduciaries. And these guides are available in English and Spanish, which I think is great because even someone who is conversationally comfortable in English may have some difficulty with the legal jargon, as I know even native speakers can. And then the last resource we have is for kids and financial literacy beginners. So this discusses what concepts to start teaching with, like money, savings, and investing, needs versus wants. And it also offers strategies for teaching financial literacy by different age groups, and also a directory of beginner-friendly resources and educational materials. So that can be really helpful for our financial literacy beginners. So thank you so much. I do hope you find these resources helpful. Financial literacy is such a valuable skill, and the Florida Literacy Coalition is here to empower you with the knowledge and resources you need. If you'd like, you can contact me at bella@floridaliteracy.org, and you can call our hotline at 1-800-237-5113. Thank you so much. And now I'm
Thank
going
you, Allison.
I'm just going to put in a bunch of links for everything.
I got some of them there, Allison.
Oh,
And if anybody knows somebody who needs tutoring or other kinds of instructional services, reading, writing, math, English language services, give us a call as well. Thanks for this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison and Greg. And I just wanted to let everybody know that those that have registered and are participating, there will be a follow-up email sent to you all with a link where you can download these presentations along with all those very helpful resources. I mean, there were some on there, Allison and Greg, that I think I need to go and take. I mean, that was a pretty broad spectrum of resources available. And as a coworker used to might say, knowledge is power. So finding where those resources are can really empower us to make better financial decisions. So now we're going to switch a little bit now, talk about some other financial planning opportunities. I'm going to have Craig go ahead and present a little bit about special needs plannings and what your services you offer to the families that we both serve.
Absolutely.
Craig, with that, go ahead.
Thank you, John. I'm going to share my screen and I will echo what they just said. Those resources, some of them can probably sometimes feel maybe a little bit basic, but the foundation of what is there in those resources is fantastic. I deal with clients all day long, helping them with these basic topics. So those are great resources to use at really every level. Well, my name is Craig Eppy, and our company is Levanti Wealth, and we do a lot of investments and planning and all sorts of things in our office, but we have spent a long time in the special needs world, helping families really protect their kids and making sure, or adult kids, not always kids, sometimes it's their adults, to make sure that they're always taken care of. And so there's a lot that goes into that and a lot of topics. So, the big topic that I try to cover is that the fact that retirement is not impossible and that the special needs planning can happen, right? We can put all of these things together. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It does take extra effort than the average person is maybe putting into their planning, but it's not impossible. And yeah, there's a lot of finance that goes into this. This is just our disclaimer. Basically, that what we're not giving tax and legal advice. This is based to be financial planning. There is some concepts in here that are based in accounting and taxes, but this is meant to be financial planning. And we always want to make sure that we're taking this type of information to our advisor to really talk about it for your personal situation. So this is my father. He actually helped get us started into special needs planning. And this is myself. And we've been doing this for just over 30 years now. Special needs planning came into the law in 1993. And this is an individual by the name of Danny that's a good family friend of ours. That is why we got involved into it. His mother brought the need and the concern to my father and said, we got to figure out special needs planning. And this is a very tough topic. It is not easy to figure out all the pieces of the puzzle, not just the financial side, but the special needs side of how all of this stuff comes together. And like I said, we've been doing this for 30 years. So for 30 years, we've been entrenched in this space, working with those families and those organizations that really make a difference. And Able United has been a huge help for us and our clients as well. And so, like we said, we've been successful at really helping families do this. So let's get into some of the material. So we like to cover a lot of material. You'll see Able Accounts is on here. And I will, for the sake of leaving it to John, I'll skip over that part. But it is a huge aspect now of what we look at when we plan for people. And ultimately, my goal is to protect government benefits, right? That is the big crux of this planning, that our children or anybody with a disability, to John's point, before age 26 is due government benefits, and that's what we need to protect. Unfortunately, these benefits follow Medicaid rules, meaning if an individual has more than $2,000 in their name, they get disqualified from those benefits. Right. So in 1993, when these trusts came into existence, that became the first ability for us to even leave additional dollars or funding to an individual without disqualifying their benefits. Before 1993, it was virtually impossible. Right. So what are the benefits that we're talking about? We're talking about SSI income, which is a Social Security-based income for individuals with a disability. Medicaid and Medicare, right? Medicaid is the base benefit that we really think of for the health coverage and these benefits. But if you work for yourself at all, even as an individual with a disability, or when a parent goes on Social Security, they will get to their other Social Security, disability, and Medicare benefits. Right? But there's limits to these. So you can see here some of the basic limits of what has to happen to stay within these benefits, right? If I, as an individual, make more than $1,000 a month, roughly, I can be disqualified from the benefits. If I make more than $2,300 as an individual, I can be disqualified from my medical benefits, right? Med waiver is not income-based, but it's a huge benefit that really helps with all sorts of services that a lot of people aren't even familiar with, right? But all of these benefits do have ways that they get looked at to be disqualified if planning isn't done properly. So first and foremost, I want to make sure people are educated to what benefits are out there. How do you get to them, right? And how do we protect them, right? Most of these benefits are not going to come into existence for people until their child is of age, 18 or older, right? When the income of the parent is no longer qualified for the child. But if we qualify as parents with the income testing, you could see these benefits for a child underneath age 18, right? But it's all income based, okay? The waiver is the one piece, like I said, that's not income based. Okay. Now that is really going to cover more like therapies, summer camp, right? There's all sorts of different things that it'll pay for that are not covered by the Medicaid and not made to be covered by the SSI income. Okay. Now, how do we protect these benefits, right? There's a lot of ways that we want to protect an individual with a disability, and we're going to cover this one down here, letter of intent, in detail, because for me, this is very big on protecting individuals with disabilities. But these are all the things that are needed when you talk about different health and legal aspects of how do I help protect this situation. All right. Trusts are ultimately going to be used, and we'll go into more detail on those to protect the assets, right? Durable power of attorney and healthcare surrogate are used to protect the individual, right? Same with guardianship. And letter of intent becomes the world's greatest set of instructions for our children. Okay, so let's go into things in a little more detail. First, you've got the trust aspect of things, right? The trust that we're going to use is a third-party special needs trust for most individuals. That is the trust that enables a parent to leave money for their child and not disqualify the benefits. It's third party because it's left by a third party, right? It wasn't the disabled individual's own income. It was the assets of a third party, okay? And while you're alive, you're going to have what's called a revocable trust, right? Or a living trust. It means it's changeable. But the moment that you pass, you're going to have instructions in there that are unchangeable so that you don't have to worry about what happens, okay? I hear a question here. I'm just going to jump back to it for a second. It says, SSDI, what does it mean? So SSDI is income from Social Security from my own working years. If I worked in any form and it was income that I earned and I reported in my taxes. That's earned income. SSDI is going to be that benefit that I get when I'm disabled after I was working, versus SSI is based off purely my disability. Okay. So didn't mean to jump there. Let me go back a second. So then irrevocable, it's going to be unchangeable. So when that happens, none of the rules that you set up for your child can be changed on you. So you know that what you set up is going to be locked in place. Now you can set up the ability to have certain aspects of it changed, right? Hey, if a tax aspect changes or if certain things happen, how does the trust react? But it's all based off of your rules. Okay. Now, once that trust is set up, how do we use it? What does it actually do? It's a document, right? It says, protect my child, protect their benefits, right? Distribute income as needed. But that's pretty much it, right? It doesn't say anything individual about the child, right? But what are some of the big financial concerns then that we end up with from these trusts? Right? These trusts are wonderful because now we have the ability to leave assets to create income above these benefits that are great, but are not going to be the end all be all, planning result. And how do we leave these extra dollars? Okay, we're going to put them in a trust. Okay, now I've put these dollars in a trust. What happens next? Right? The first is the moment that you pass and that trust is now operating with your assets to distribute income, we are operating at the highest tax rate of the day. Okay, so those trusts distribute income at a very high tax rate, right? So that's the first issue. Okay. Secondly, is that there's cost to administer the trust, right? So if we have family that we can trust to handle all of these trust operations, administer funds and do all of these things, maybe we won't have expensive costs there. But in many cases, we may not have a family member that can do that, or family member at all. Maybe someone, isn't capable and or we don't have the person. You can hire corporate trustees to handle that. And they, by law, are going to handle these things absolutely to the letter of your trust, right? And protect that individual, but it comes with a cost. Okay. So a couple of questions just to answer live. What was SSI? So it is not income dependent. So the SSI is going to be income dependent always. If the individual is making SSI, making income on their own, they can disqualify their SSI. Okay. Now I'm more worried about the Medicaid benefit more than SSI, right? But they can always disqualify that benefit. That benefit can be disqualified over that $900 or so threshold. If they're making that amount of income per month or more, they can be disqualified. These are the Medicaid rules. Okay. And why is able account capped at 100,000? It's capped at 100,000 because that's how the government structured it. Over 100,000, it can disqualify the benefits again. There can be, limitations there. And John, I'm sure can answer more questions on that part, but basically it limits it to 100,000. And that's the best that we have, right? That's where a trust comes into play. And we want to leave assets above that amount in a trust and use an able account below 100,000. Okay. So, and did I answer? And then possible funding option. What options do we put in the trust? What's most efficient, right? There's a lot of assets that can go into a trust. And what's the most efficient, right? These assets, like I said, are taxed at the highest rate of the day. So there's a couple of creative ways in planning, and that gets way more into the specifics, but you want to look at what you're putting in there. We don't just want to put every asset we own just in there willy-nilly without really looking at how is that asset structured and what's going to be the effect. So we know what kind of income can I really know is going to be there for my child, for that individual, versus, I put some money in there, but it might not solve all the problems. Okay. And so let's talk about some of those things, right? So obviously we're trying to protect the government benefits, right? That's the first thing. But we need to make sure, and to that last slide, we need to make sure that our trustees and our guardians are well established, right? These are people that are going to be operating all of the pieces of our puzzle for us when we're not here. Trustee over the trust, over the assets. Guardian over the individual, right? So you will most likely appoint different people, right? Who's really good with your child? Who's the babysitter or the sibling or the loved one that we know would be a great guardian? Or do we want to hire guardian services? Then it becomes additional cost, right? And trustee, we talked about corporate trustee, that's cost to the trust. But if it's a family member and they're not charging the trust, that could be a free service. And those are really important people because that trustee has got to adhere to all the rules of the trust. They're going to protect our assets. If the guardian comes asking for funds that aren't appropriate, it's the trustee's responsibility to protect that trust and make sure that they're qualifying those asks from the trust, right? And that's why communication with family is so important and why an experienced attorney is needed, because these things are very specific. So if this is not a qualified special needs attorney that's writing these documents, right, that's working on the guardianship, then I want to make sure that they've got that expertise. If not, let's really be stress testing that situation to make sure that the right thing is still happening, right? An attorney with no experience could do it the right way, but I want to be really careful with that, right? And then to that point, right, the funding, is a really tricky situation, right? And we have to really be looking at that in relation to retirement first, right? First, a parent has to retire. If we don't retire and we wake up at 90 years old and we were working to support the needs, that's going to be a big problem, right? So we have to work through our retirement and know that we can spend our retirement assets and then still have enough for the trust. Okay, so let's talk about, and I'll jump around on a couple of subjects, but let's talk about guardianship for a second, because this is a big one. Okay. When your child turns 18, they are an adult like every other individual, okay, with all the rights. Now, the big forms of guardianship are plenary and limited. These are forms of guardianship that were really designed for the elderly. Now, if you have a child that is severely disabled, that is, in a wheelchair with a feeding tube, that is, not going to be able to, ever recover or progress from that state, you may need a plenary or limited type guardianship. But for most special needs situations, advocacy becomes the right form, okay? And advocacy has a specific statute to it in the state of Florida that really goes after protecting the primary concerns, the health concerns, the financial concerns, and the living concerns. How do we make health decisions? How do we protect their finances? And how do we say where they're going to live and how that care is going to be, structured, right? You can take away those abilities from them and not really take them away, but give yourself express authority over, just like when they were under the age of 18, versus the other forms of guardianship strip their rights away from them, right? Not only is it a much more expensive process to go through these forms of guardianship, advocacy will cost you about half or a third of the cost, but it's not going to take away the right to vote and the right to marry and all the things that we want. Okay, so this is a big one. Now, let's talk about some of those other documents that we had addressed, right? These are documents that can be used as really good band-aids if we have not done our special needs planning, and or documents that are really needed for ourselves and our spouses, right? If we're married, they still don't have authority over our health decisions. We need a healthcare surrogate, right? Living will in Florida, a lot of times we've called it the Terry Schiavo document because after her case, we realized everybody needs a living will. What happens if you, God forbid, are not able to speak for yourself and are on a feeding tube and are on a ventilator? Do you want to be kept alive? Do you want someone to, wait a month before they do something. What are your wishes? These are documents that we need for ourselves and that we can set up for our kids as well. And then within guardianship and the trust work, that those documents are within that as well. Many times the attorneys are doing these documents when we're doing that planning. Okay. But the big one, letter of intent. Okay. Now, letter of intent is not a legal document, but nowhere have we talked about your child individually. What's their habits? What's their day-to-day schedule? Where do they go, for school? Who's their doctor? What fruit do they hate and love, right? What are all these things that as parents, that are probably not written down somewhere? And if you tried to write them down, it would be very tough to really start to think of everything, right? So with my clients, I really try to make sure I provide them a comprehensive letter of intent that is everything from medical to personal to future hopes and dreams of things that can be updated regularly, that is always in correlation to who they are. Okay. So, and 5 years from now, they might have a different, fruit that they love and hate, right? So those things need to get updated so that something happens to you, you have a very good comprehensive plan. Okay. So now let's talk about finances a little bit. The finances are crucially important, and we have to look at all the different things that you have, right? Now, there's no magic in financial planning. 1 + 1 = 2, right? So that's why what they were saying in financial literacy is spot on, right? And we have to look at the way that you are spending money and budgeting. Back to financial literacy is a huge part of that. And we have some of these types of assets, okay? Now, we want to review these assets, not to just make sure that we're building up a plan that has these things, but also how do we make sure that everything is titled properly? Any of these assets, and I'm going to go back a screen too, any of these assets have their own beneficiary designations to them that could pay individually. Meaning you could create a trust, but if the asset's beneficiary says something else, it's going to go where it directs it to. So if it directs it to your children, or if it doesn't say anything, then it automatically directs it to your estate. And in probate, they will make it equally split between all heirs. So if I have 2 children and I have an account with 10 grand in it, it's going to force $5,000 to each of my kids 50-50. And that $5,000 is going to disqualify the benefits. Okay. So that's where we really want to be looking at these assets to make sure that we're putting a plan together on how they're titled and where they're going, right? And if we don't, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail, right? One of my favorite quotes, besides 1 + 1 = 2, this one always rings true. And at the end of the day, to really do good financial planning and special needs planning, you need an entire team, because there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle. And it's not just getting the trust done and making sure that the government benefits are set up and structured and making sure the guardianship is there, but it's also making sure accounting is done properly. I'm a financial advisor. I talk about accounting a lot. We look into it a lot, but I'm not doing the accounting work. And it is really needed with special needs. You guys have a lot of deductions as parents with kids, on a spectrum or with a disability that qualify for deductions and can help you save money on your taxes. That's important now and important in the trust as well, right? And then housing and additional services, hugely important, right? We need that housing and additional services because we need long-term housing. Your kids are going to grow up if they're not already adults. And if they're not staying in your home, which is more expensive, right? I saw someone's comment before about, what it takes to really do this. And when we do special needs planning, you have everything from private care at your individual home to a group home structure, right? All of them come with difficulties, right? The group home structure is less expensive. Private care is more expensive. You probably are going to hope that you have at least somewhere between $200,000 to north of $2 million in a trust, depending on which design you decide to go with. If they are in a group home, that group home is supposed to take their benefits. So they'll take their SSI income, and they'll even use some of the Medicaid benefits if there's things that they can, they will max out their benefits as best as they can, and they'll feed them, but it's a baseline of care. You will want additional dollars to supplement their monthly, care. And if they need a new iPad or, certain things that happen. And that's where you want to look at how much you're putting in that trust and what the need is. Private care in your home is definitely more expensive, and that's why it requires a lot more dollars, or we need to work on a private group home. Meaning, right, do we have a house with 4 bedrooms and we could bring in a couple roommates? And right, there's all sorts of ways you can look at this, but this planning has to be done ahead of time because there's just too much that goes into it. And we want to have our working years to plan through this. We want to have income flexibility as best as possible, and we want to have brain power. I don't want to work on this at 70 years old and hope I'm making the right decisions. I want to work on this, while I'm in the my prime if I can. Okay. And there's a lot of things that we're looking at when it comes to what we're putting into all of these benefits, right? So what's covered by benefits and what's not, right? That's where this trust comes into play. And even with some of these things that are covered, how much are they covered, right? It says personal care. That might cover a haircut, every other month or once a quarter. But what if they want a haircut every 3 weeks? Right? Or maybe what if they want their nails done, or, all these things that are not covered, right? So we really have to talk about what's covered and what's not, right? And understand that for yourself. And that's where budgeting is key, right? So it goes back to the financial planning, literacy, and basics. Always, no matter what level, we need that budgeting in there. And then, we're going to work through these topics, and I will help people understand any of this stuff in more detail. So if you do have more questions, we have an entire process for financial planning to help people with this special needs and financial planning to make sure that everything gets done, right? And there's a very specific process to it. And my goal is to make sure that we're covering some pretty obvious things, right? If I can reduce your risk and reduce your taxes, or increase your consumption and increase your protection so that no one can take this away from you or your child, and make it safe, right? That's my goal, right? And we want to start now so we can get it done and find all the right professionals and build as much possible financial security as we can. Right. And we do cover a lot of topics when we meet. So it could be protection planning, retirement planning, special needs planning. There's so many things that go into it. But the big thing is, do we have a to-do list, and are we getting it done? Right. That's my goal when someone hires me, is to say, was the to-do list checked off? Do I have a plan I can kind of touch and feel? Right. And really make sure that I feel comfortable with how that mousetrap works. Okay. And like I said, happy to answer questions. So if we do want to set up a consultation, please feel free to reach out. But ultimately, it's about making sure that you go through all of these topics for yourself and make sure they're getting done. And if we have questions that are more specifically financial, happy to answer those as well. But I really wanted to make sure I cover some of these unknowns, because this is the information that nobody's normally hearing. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Craig. I know it was a wealth of information. Literally, it's in your title. And it is a lot. And it can be very all-consuming. And a lot of individuals, we're like me sometimes, we're flying by the seat of our pants. And so, it's good to start thinking, planning and just taking that initial step. I think that's hard for a lot of individuals, is taking that initial step. And so tying it back to ABLE accounts, right? That's something that, can be done quite easily. 15 to 20 minutes of your time to get an ABLE United account established. And something you didn't touch too much on, but I wanted to bring it up just because I think ABLE accounts are such an important part of individuals' planning. And really, that's the second part of your name, is investing, right? Because we didn't really even touch on too much on
Yeah,
investing and
which is
investments.
what we can talk about now, which is my big points with ABLE accounts is that we talked about the limit, right? You can only get up to 100,000 before it disqualifies. But the big factor is it expands that $2,000 rule. Now I can have pretty much as I want in normal, reasonable fashion in my child's name. They can have access to it, right? Like you said, there's a flex spending card, so you can actually add dollars to it so that they have access to a portion of the funds to spend. They can be used on so many things that their benefits are not, paying for. And that's where it is a huge benefit to all of my clients, right? Even my high-end clients that maybe you have a 529 account. If your child has a 529, you need to be transferring those funds over to the ABLE account. It's the only place we can put it, right? Unless you have a place to spend it, we need to transfer those funds into the ABLE account, and you are limited by the limits. So if you got 20 grand there, it's going to take us 2 years to get that money over. We need to be benefit planning, right? Meaning getting that in there before we're going to apply for benefits, so that Social Security is not seeing that, because that will disqualify them.
It's a good point. And that's one thing I stress with an ABLE account is really having that plan, right? Because we try to keep it as simplistic as possible when individuals enroll and they're saying, okay, I got to at least put $25 in to get started. And they get a little nervous saying, well, I don't know where to put that money. So Craig, putting on that kind of investment hat, and you think about people when they're starting to invest or save, and it's, they've got their emergency fund down, but now they want to actually do something. What's one of those first steps? Is it kind of a kind of goal setting, saying what's the goal of this money, or where do you usually start?
So great question. So first and foremost, to your point, safety net set, right? 3 to 6 months of living expenses in savings, not invested, right? Which is counterintuitive because we want our money to work for us, but having free cash flow is the first ability to get any money to really work for us long term, right? And so then to your point, John, right, what are we using this money for is crucial, because if I'm leaving it long term, I can set up a goal for it. I can really start to save and plan towards that goal. If it's short term, we have a way less investment options, right? Very basic. If I can't leave it for more than 5 years, you don't want to put it into long-term investments, meaning you want to leave it into CDs or, high yield savings or your regular, right? Something that's accessible, because you may need to touch it. And if the market is not performing, no one's got a crystal ball. If the market's not performing, we need to be able to still operate our goals, our planning, our timing, right? And so having these layers, right, set up are crucial. So savings is first. And then to your point, once you start to put a few bucks into investments, you don't have to invest it right away. Meaning you could open up the ABLE account, put money in, but not invest it, right? There are money market options. That is an investment, but it's extremely safe, right? You're not going to see losses there the way you would in a typical investment account versus going into an investment model, something with a conservative, moderate, or aggressive notion of how it's invested in mutual funds, right? Yes, we want to invest in stocks and all these wonderful things, but mutual funds is the first place to start. That is the first place you can get diversification and exposure at almost any dollar amount, right? Yeah. Clients that come to me, if you don't have more than $250,000, I don't buy individual stocks because I can't afford the risk that it comes with it on your financial plan, right? So that's a good understanding for people to say, all right, what am I saving to? Until when, I'm going to start maybe investing, but I'm going to look at mutual funds, and that conservative, moderate, aggressive mindset is key, right? Right in the ABLE account, it's actually super easy. You can literally pick conservative or moderate or aggressive. Now, there's a score that goes along with that, right? So there are risk tolerance scores that you can look at and we can do for you. And another way to plan some of this out, I'll give another tool, is Vanguard has a tool called Retirement Nest Egg Calculator. And it's a web right on Vanguard's website, and it'll show you how much money do I need to retire? How many years am I going to retire for? I'm going to be retired for 30 years and I need $1 million or two. How much do I need? It'll actually calculate that stuff and show you your probability of success. How likely are you to have a plan that works if I do it this way, right? And that's where you could start to set some planning and the goals and all of those more long-term thoughts in mind. But without a financial plan, you just need to save as much as you possibly can. And if you're not comfortable yet, start with that money market option inside the ABLE account, and then graduate to really investing once you've had the time to really use some of their, financial literacy, courses. Or if you are looking for a financial advisor, working with someone like myself or someone that's qualified as a fiduciary. You want a fiduciary that can really make sure that they're on your side of the table, making decisions in your best interest.
Great. I'm going to invite Greg and Allison in for the last 5 minutes or so we have. So, and while they're getting back on, I wanted to just address this question as a question we received about the $100,000 cap. And so really that's for individuals on SSI. If you're on SSI, there's some rules about the $100,000 cap. And the question we get is, why is there a cap to begin with? And really, I think it goes back to when this legislation was moving and Social Security was kind of putting their 2 cents in. Their concern was taking advantage of the system in the fact that, SSI is that monthly paycheck up to $914 a month that an individual may receive. And if somebody's sitting on $100,000 in an ABLE account, do they really need that monthly cash benefit? And so I think that was the concern. Now, if you're not worried about SSI, these accounts can actually go up to $418,000 before you can no longer contribute to them. However, I stress that, and probably Craig would stress as well, is really ABLE accounts are kind of an intermediary of what you're planning on using it for, right? These aren't long-term investments. It's more like, hey, I want to put a down payment on a home in 5 years versus I want to leave this to my future children or family members, because really they're not geared to be kind of in life building, estate planning type tools. It's kind of that intermediary savings. But Greg and Allison, this is a question we get quite often. I know we have just a couple minutes. Is credit, right? Credit scores. I don't have credit. If you have an ABLE account, we're not doing credit background checks on you. And so one of the questions we get in starting our foundation in finances and maybe wanting to put a down payment on a home or going for a car loan or something like that. Can you speak a little bit to us about credit? How do you build credit? What is credit? I know that's a lot to answer in a couple minutes, but where do people get started for building their credit score?
So credit is kind of like a grade, like ABC. It's a grade that tells people who give money to you, like loaners, how good you are at paying it back and how likely you are to pay it back. So the most well-known method of establishing credit is through a credit card. But it doesn't have to be only through a credit card. You can also improve your credit by paying your rent on time, paying off student loans, car loans, and every loan that you pay off should be done on time. Of course, if you are late, that can also negatively affect your credit score as well. Then you can check your credit score on if you do have a credit card, it does usually have an estimation on your statement monthly. But if you don't, you can also go on Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. These companies all provide free credit reports once a year. So you can get up to 3 reports per year with these 3 providers. So keep a good eye on it.
That's great. I know we're out of time here, but I want to throw this question to both of you, first with Allison, and just thinking about this webinar and financial literacy, and what's one piece of advice you would give somebody looking to start planning for the future?
I think the best thing that you can do is just never stop learning. If you lose your job or if something happens, you never know. Life is unpredictable, but no one can take away your knowledge. And having substantial knowledge opens up so many different career possibilities, which is especially true in today's digital age where information constantly surrounds us.
Great.
Knowledge is power. A lot of what Craig shared really is so valuable in terms of planning for the future. And it doesn't have to be an overwhelming process, though. You can really use some of the resources that we shared to kind of dip your toe in the water and start that process of learning how to make good decisions when it comes to managing your money and your finances.
All right, over to you, Craig. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree. I mean, ultimately, starting with budgeting and savings is where it all starts. I sit with clients of all varieties, and budgeting is missed at every level. People don't know what they're spending, whether they make 10 grand a year or $1 million a year. I see the spectrum across the board. They don't know budgeting, and then that will help you with savings. And one way to do that is make sure you do start a credit card, but pay it off monthly. What they're talking about building credit, find a way to find that good credit card that gives you points and resources, but that becomes your thing that you keep checking on to see how much did I spend, and you know exactly what you're paying off is much easier to get a grip on than that one charge you put on there.
Great. Once again, I want to thank you all, Craig, Allison, Greg, for your time today. I also want to thank our interpreters for taking time as well to provide this valuable resource. And just as a reminder for everybody, knowledge is power. We're so appreciative for everybody's time today. We do know if you still have outstanding questions, feel free to shoot us an email at info@ableunited.com. And stay tuned as we hopefully will send you an email with this information as well. And of course, it'll be posted on our YouTube channel at a later date. We thank you so much for everybody's time today. And until next time, take care.